So the user is going to log in with their lab coordinator credentials into 𝖬𝖾 or MedSkills, and opens to the left navigation pane. We're going to focus on the Patients tab as a lab coordinator. So if the student is required to barcode scan the patient's identification band that's created in the 𝖬Լ or MedSkills software, they'll put their cursor here in the box and scan the ID band. The patient's MAR will present itself directly. If the students are not required to scan, they can make a selection of a patient chart in the listing that is provided to them. Now, we're logged in as a lab coordinator here, so I have a running list of different patient charts that have been made available or copied over from 𝖬Լ as a selectable option. Students, however, will only ever see the patient charts that they are assigned to them for their activity. So they may see one or two patients, they're not going to see the faculty members or the organization's full list of patient charts that have been copied. So we're going to select Joan here for our experience, this one. At the top of the page, on the patients page, for students and faculty, we have a yellow banner bar that represents the patient's identification band with information that populates over from the admissions document in the patient profile. So if allergies have been included, isolation status, the physician name, etc., this will all be presented on the patient printable wristband in either the paper version or the thermal optional barcode printer version for our software. There is a reference here for the student for the current simulation time. And again, our software always works in real time. Underneath the yellow banner bar, there is order type. So this reference identifies that when the patient medication administration document opens, some of the patient charts have numerous medications for administration as part of the patient's care pathway. Some students may find this overwhelming when they're first starting medication administration. So by utilizing the order type indicator at their faculty's direction, they can parse out and limit the amount of visualization in their initial stages as a novice learner. So for instance, for this week, if we're only looking at intermittent medication administration, PRN meds, in the drop down here, there's a blue caret in the gray drop down. I can search out PRN meds, and the system will only locate those two medications that are associated with PRNs. It helps the students learn to navigate the software and their organizational skills. The all in the drop down is the default for all medications that have been provided in the provider orders, and they are not alphabetized in any way. The medications are listed based on how they were entered into the patient profile in 𝖬Լ or MedSkills. If the student is seeking only the patient's continuous infusions, IV medications perhaps, they can select just that one or two that are appropriate. So it helps the student with acclimating to the software. Scheduled medications, again, are a part of the list. In the center of the screen, there are three tabulations. The blue tab is always today's active MAR document for the student experience. They have the ability to see 24 hours previous to today's date and time. So if they want to evaluate when the last pain med was given, when the last insulin injection was provided, they can do so to identify if it's within the appropriate time parameter to give the next successive dose. They also have the ability to see 24 hours into the future of today's date and time. So if they are in the sim lab for successive experiences day to day, they can pre-plan their student experience based on the date and time. Most commonly, the students are using today's active MAR document. There may be a red indicator that populates on the screen here for the faculty member that identifies overrides. It will only be visible if the faculty member has set the override application in the permissions of MedSkills or 𝖬Լ. Many schools are not teaching overrides any longer because of a patient safety initiative, and many healthcare organizations are preventing override medication administrations in the interest of patient safety. So it may be something that is not visible to everyone. There is a print indicator here, so if faculty want the students printing off their activity log files, again, they can do so as long as the all-in-one computer associated with the medication cart or cabinet is mapped to a physical printer in the sim or skills lab environment. And the swap view button enables users, both faculty and students, to make modifications to the presentation of the MAR document. The original vision of the medication administration pathway utilized information through the web development team that was more horizontal in nature for documentation purposes. This was more applicable to current electronic medical records from our commercial branded sites in the real environment. So it was focused on realism. Faculty members preferred this to be altered in the interest of less confusion for students. So our web team did create the option for any user to make their own personal choice about which way they want to provide their medication administration documentation. In this current viewpoint, it's more horizontal. The students also have the ability to review medication orders as if they were in MedSkills or sim-EMR as well. So there's a provider order reference here on the screen. And in the dropdown, where there is order details that were created on the order sheet, those will be listed here. Where there is a visibility for no order text, all that means is there was no order details provided, but there were additional medications that were included for that medication, for that provider order sheet. The swap view button allows us to go back to the columnar view of medication administration documents. This is how most faculty became educated as a clinician. So this is more common and more helpful to them. Now, if the student was about to give a medication, they see the medications in their running list here. If I go back to my all screen, let's say the student wanted to administer this Ativan medication. He or she has already scanned the patient's identification band per se. They'll click the green administer button. And there may be a substitution alert that is identified on the screen. This is set up in sim-EMR or MedSkills in the order application under the virtual pharmacy formulary, which will be discussed in a later video. All this means is the brand may be altered, the brand name of the medication may be altered, and the student has an option to decline and not proceed with their administrative practice. They can contact their instructor, contact the pharmacy, or do further investigation. If the student recognizes the substitution may just be a brand name that's altered, they can click the yes button. The medication cart or cabinet device electronics will release, and it gives them guiding text on the screen because we have a settings indicator set from our barcode scanner that is requiring the students to scan the medication barcode sample. When I do so, the documentation screen for the student to complete their pathway is provided. So they have on the page the order that they are identifying from the medication documentation. So we're from the provider order is 1 milligram of Ativan. Any notes that the provider included related to the medication order at creation in the patient profile can be listed here. If this medication was previously administered, it would give the students an identification of when this last dose was provided. And importantly so, if the student has scanned the medication accordingly, they'll get an indication under using here of what medication they just scanned. In this case, the student scanned Ativan 2 milligrams from the medication cabinet, drawer 1, pocket 1. The form date will always deport to today's date and time. There are 5 radio buttons that enable the student to make a selection on the action that they're about to take. If the student selects given or partially given, they're prompted immediately beneath for a dosage box, and they type in how much of the medication the patient is receiving. If the student chooses the 3 medication actions, refused, withheld, or wasted, notice the dosage box went away and we have a reason. Same for withheld or wasted. And when there's a waste involved, there's a reason as well as a quantity wasted option that is made available. So the student can be more accurate and concise in their documentation. If they gave the full dose, no problem. They'll type dosage given, 1 milligram, or whatever their choice may be. In this case, because the student pulled a 2 milligram dose, they want to identify that there was a partial amount given. That's one option. Or they could provide a waste application. Reason, 2 milligrams available. Quantity wasted would be 1 milligram because the student had a 2 milligram tab. If there is a quantity waste, as the Ativan is a controlled substance, there should be a witness protocol that develops here. Location, if the student is giving orals or injectables, central line administration medications, they can document their administration here. In this case, the student is giving an oral med. Any notes that the student wants to associate to their specific medication administration. In the interest of giving an antihypertensive such as low pressure, the student may want to include the pre-administration blood pressure and pulse that they obtain in order for safety, and that the faculty knows that they follow the appropriate clinical pathway prior to giving a risky medication. It could be that they check a capillary glucose in the instance of providing a patient an insulin injection. So these are options that the students can include. It's not a mandatory field. They put their initials in the box, and then the update quantity box is available for them. If they're removing and wasting 1 whole pill, they would want to update the quantity to 9, again, to accomplish inventory management, and then click their save button when they're completed with their documentation. If the student is giving the drug as it was provided, we'll click the given box again. Here's dosage given will be 1 milligram. In this case, 1 milligram, that's correct. Location oral. Oral is a given, so they don't necessarily need to fill in this field. Any notes that they want to include, again, based on this patient's level of agitation. Initials. And again, because they removed 1 pill from the drawer, they're going to update the quantity and then click save. Now there's a little exclamation point here in the lower right-hand corner of this tab. If I click the exclamation point, it presents an option for the student to create a discrepancy report. Maybe when they entered the drawer, the reported quantity was 10, their actual quantity that they found was 8. So that means there's 2 missing. They can then document anything that they wish in the cell, and then click that save option, complete their documentation by their personal application or inclusion. And when we go to a discrepancy file in a future video, you'll see there's the Ativan discrepancy that this student just identified. And the faculty can take the student through a discrepancy resolution process. Students that have completed the administration and documentation will see their information in the cell. So this student gave 1 milligram of Ativan, and it's viewable by the faculty for feedback purposes and response. And when the student logs out of MedsManager, this documentation crosses back to 𝖬𝖾 or MedSkills so that they don't have to double document. They can continue on with their next activity. If this student had an additional medication to administer, they'd come down to the lower part of the screen and again, complete the same pathway over again. Scanning the medication and then moving on to the documentation screen.